There are moments when silence in a courtroom speaks louder than any verdict. On that day, the air itself seemed heavy, as if everyone present understood that what was about to unfold was not merely a legal conclusion, but a moral reckoning. This was not a story about fame, nor about headlines chasing clicks. It was about a life lost, a truth uncovered, and a question that continues to unsettle millions across the world. When the law delivers its judgment, but conscience recoils, who is truly being served? What had once been quietly framed as a closed legal matter now hovered on the edge of something far greater. A sentence was being prepared, files neatly stacked, procedures followed to the letter. Yet beneath that order lay unease, because some crimes do not fade into paperwork. Some stories refuse to stay buried. And as whispers began to ripple beyond the courtroom walls, it became clear that this case was about to escape the confines of legal protocol and enter the court of public conscience. What happened next would not only challenge the system, but force everyone watching to confront an uncomfortable truth about justice itself. The proceedings were meant to be final, a closed session, carefully controlled, designed to bring quiet closure to a case that had already shaken many. Inside the room, there were no cameras, no grand speeches, only measured voices and formal language. Yet even in that controlled environment, tension was impossible to suppress. Those who had studied the case knew the details were not ordinary. The events leading to Yu Menglong's death had unfolded with disturbing precision. What the public once believed to be an unfortunate accident had, piece by piece, revealed itself as something far darker. Patterns emerged, timelines aligned too neatly. Testimonies, when viewed together, told a story of planning rather than chance. At the center of the storm was a network of trust turned against itself. People who had shared childhood memories, laughter, and loyalty were now exposed as participants in an act that defied basic human decency. The crime was not sudden, it was deliberate. Movements were calculated. Choices were made long before that final night. Evidence suggested restraint, manipulation, and an unsettling level of coordination. It was not chaos, it was design, and that distinction mattered more than anything else. As the session progressed, one voice began to waver from the expected script. A public prosecutor, seasoned and disciplined, struggled to maintain the emotional distance his role demanded. Hours of reviewing files, confessions, and reconstructions had taken their toll. He had seen the photographs, he had read the statements, he knew exactly how the events had unfolded. When he finally spoke, it was not with theatrical anger, but with exhaustion sharpened by disbelief. He questioned how such a sequence of actions, marked by intention and cruelty, could possibly lead to a punishment that felt so restrained. His words were not meant for the outside world. They were part of a private deliberation. Yet they carried a weight that could not be contained. He described a victim rendered helpless, betrayed by those he trusted, and left without mercy. He spoke of planning that extended beyond the act itself into efforts designed to erase suspicion and rewrite reality. Each sentence landed heavily, not because it revealed something new, but because it stripped away any remaining illusion that this was a simple case. In that moment, the room fell silent. Not out of respect for authority, but from the collective understanding that a line had been crossed. The prosecutor realized it too late. What he had voiced was not merely legal frustration, it was moral outrage. and it exposed the growing chasm between what the law was prepared to allow and what conscience demanded. The consequences were swift. Breaching protocol, even unintentionally, carries a price. Within hours, attention shifted from the sentence itself to the man who had spoken too openly. Investigations were launched. Duties were suspended. His actions, though driven by conviction, placed him under scrutiny. The system, precise and uncompromising, responded as it always does when boundaries are crossed. Order had to be restored. Rules had to be enforced. Yet outside the courtroom, something else was unfolding. Details from the session began to surface. Fragments of testimony reached the public, and once they did, they could not be ignored. Across social platforms and news outlets, the reaction was immediate. People were no longer debating speculation. They were responding to substance, to the idea that a life taken through planning and betrayal might be met with what many perceived as leniency. What followed was not chaos, but convergence. Voices from different cultures, age groups, and backgrounds echoed the same question. How should justice be measured? By procedure alone, or by the gravity of harm inflicted? Candlelight gatherings appeared not as spectacles, but as quiet statements. Commentators spoke less about personalities and more about principles. Legal experts weighed in, acknowledging the complexity of sentencing frameworks while recognizing the intensity of public discontent. For the family left behind, the debate was never abstract. It was deeply personal. They did not speak in legal terms. They spoke in the language of loss, of absence, of days that would never be restored. Their call was not for revenge, but for recognition. Recognition that some acts alter lives beyond repair. Recognition that punishment carries symbolic weight as well as legal function. Under mounting pressure, the system responded, not with immediate reversal, but with reconsideration. The sentence was suspended. A review was announced. It was not a conclusion, but a pause, a signal that public conscience had reached a volume impossible to dismiss. For some, it was relief. For others, it was merely the first step in a longer struggle. This case has since become more than a single tragedy. It stands as a mirror held up to the structures we rely on to define right and wrong. It asks whether silence preserves fairness, or whether transparency sometimes demands discomfort. It reminds us that those within the system are human, vulnerable to the same emotional weight as those outside it. And it challenges the idea that justice, once delivered, is beyond question. No outcome can restore what was lost. No sentence can fully account for betrayal, fear, and final moments that should never have occurred. But what remains is the insistence that accountability matters, that scrutiny is not an attack on law, but a call for it to evolve with conscience, and that when enough voices refuse to look away, even the most rigid systems are forced to listen. If stories like this resonate with you, if you believe that examining truth, justice, and human responsibility matters, then this conversation does not end here. Thank you for spending your time with Update X 24 Hours, for listening, and for reflecting alongside us. If you found value in this story, consider subscribing to the channel and staying connected. Your support allows us to continue exploring the stories that challenge, inform, and inspire. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay engaged, and never stop asking the questions that shape a fairer world.